Welcome to Baby Boomer Tales. My name's Jim. You can find us at babyboomertales.com. Once you've landed on our webpage, there are links to our YouTube channel, places you can hear our podcasts like Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and more, a link to our Facebook page for Baby Boomer Tales, and a link to our Shop Tales at Amazon store, where everything you purchase going through that storefront, we get a small percentage that helps us keep this podcast commercial free. A few weeks ago, I went to the dentist to have my 6-month checkup and teeth cleaned and all that, and I told the hygienist about a sore that was up in my gums. So she looked at it real quickly, and I think you have an infection. I said, what do you mean an infection? She said something like, well, did you pop it like it was a pimple or something at one time? I said, yeah, I can't see it, but I felt it and I popped it and like a lot of relief and stuff, but it just doesn't go away. I thought I had bitten into a potato chip or something weird. You know how they'll stick into your gums sometimes? She said, no, I do think you have an infection. I said, why wouldn't it come out in my gum like that? Why does it do that? She said, well, it's finding the path of least resistance to get out of there. If it couldn't come out in something like this sore, your head would probably swell up. You'd be in terrible pain, and you'd really have a problem. But the way our bodies are made, it came out there in your gum. Okay, so they took all kinds of x-rays and space-age x-rays and stuff, and then referred me to an endodontist. And I'd gone to this guy before for a root canal. And when I went to him last time, I talked about I had been stung by a wasp right on the ear by where that root canal was going to be in my teeth. And he was so good, he was gentle and everything. That was about 4 or 5 years ago now. And so I went there, and of course he was very gentle again. But the way they had to do this is they didn't go through my tooth. He drilled a hole in my gum to underneath the tooth. If you feel up in your gums and stuff, your gum is not very thick. You can feel bone or something in there. And that's what he did. He went in that way, cleaned it all out, stitched me up. And he said, now the stitches are dissolvable. You'll have them about a week or something. They'll go away. Don't chew on it. Don't brush on it. Don't do anything, basically. Gave me some drugs and all that, and I was miserable. I was so miserable. It just gives me the heebie-jeebies, that hoobie-goobies, to think that they went through my gum to go underneath my tooth and clean it out. The infection was so bad, it had gone into underneath a couple teeth there where the roots are and stuff, and I figured I might have to have a couple root canals to get rid of it. So this guy did it. I was in his chair an hour. It was totally pain-free until that night when I got home and the pain medication started wearing off, and I was miserable, and I was not very good the next day. Well, about 2 days later, I was feeling better, and I finally had a little bit of food, not just soup. And I had some beans and ham that I'd found in the freezer, and I thawed it out and nuked some and even chewed a little bit on that side. I was supposed to really watch it, but everything came out okay. And about 20 minutes later, I thought I felt something around those teeth on my left side where I'd had that procedure. And it felt like some kind of stitches up on a tooth, like the stitching had come loose or something. So I got my wife, and she looked up there with a flashlight, and she said, I don't know. And I said, well, I touched it and tried to grab it, and I hate for it to be part of the stitches, and I tried to pull it out of there and rip a hole in my incision thing. So we decided to let it go. Well, you know how when some foreign object's in your mouth and your tongue just keeps going to it, and it was driving me crazy. and I was still pretty rummy and I still hurt pretty much. But here's the stitches hanging down. What? I thought they were supposed to dissolve. And Kim said, well, this looks more like a string. I don't think this one will dissolve. So I started feeling up there and I just said, cut it out of there. Well, every time I've ever had her take something out of me or cut something out of me or whatever, it's always ended in disaster, like her cutting my hair, or she had to get a hearing aid plug out of my ear canal once, and it's always been terrible. So I was a little apprehensive about that, but my tongue was driving me crazy feeling the thing, and I can't live like this. And I thought, okay, tomorrow I've got to just go in there and tell him that he messed up with the stitches. Well, I calmed down a little, and I went in the bathroom by myself. Our bathroom has a bunch of light. I mean, it's just light everywhere. And a big old mirror. And I took my flashlight, and between all the light in the bathroom, my flashlight shining up in my mouth, I could see the string dangling. This isn't right. So I took these surgical scissors that we have. I think we got them from Kim's dad. He's a dentist, and I think that's where we got these scissors. And went up there and I tried to, how you doing, scissors in a mirror and everything's backwards and sideways and stuff. But somehow I got in there and I cut the string, but I left about an inch still dangling. So I got about 3/4 of an inch, maybe left 3/4 of an inch dangling. Oh no. So I went and tried it again, and this time I snipped it and the whole string came out. I thought it was attached somehow around a tooth and down into my gum. And I think what happened is those beans and ham must have had a string from where they hold the ham together, when you buy it at the store. That had to be what it was. My endodontist didn't screw anything up. It was just me chewing on that side, which I probably shouldn't have done. I'm glad I'm better. My tongue's okay now. There's nothing for it to go over there for. But now it's been a week ago today, and I'm okay. And I appreciate how good of an endodontist he is. I used to think, the dentist would do your root canal and all that. This guy's specialty, apparently. Anyway, I had to talk about it because the only person I've complained to about it's my wife. I think she's tired of hearing about it. So there you go. Maybe I'll stop talking about it now. I'm all good. Last night, I actually chewed on that side. A couple things. I've been eating pretty soft food. I haven't had anything hard, no steaks or anything. And it was better. It wasn't painful or anything, and I basically did it because the stitches had dissolved away. So I figure the wound is closed up, even though it's still tender in there. Okay, well, enough of that. Top 10 60 years ago. That's the top 10 popular songs this week in 1965. Number 10, King of the Road, Roger Miller. Number 9, I Go to Pieces, Peter and Gordon. Number 8, The Boy from New York City, The Ad-Libs. Number 7, Shake by Sam Cooke. Number 6, by the Zombies, Tell Her No. Number 5, The Jolly Green Giant, The Kingsmen. Number 4, Downtown, Petula Clark. The number 3 song by The Temptations, My Girl. Number 2 is You've Lost That Lovin' Feeling, The Righteous Brothers. And the number 1 song this week by Gary Lewis and the Playboys, 1965. This song was a hit this week, 60 years ago. This diamond ring, it just doesn't shine for me anymore. The Adventures of Forky and Earl. Forky and Earl had read on a poster in the hallway at school that there was going to be some Hula girls come and give a presentation one night 2 weeks from now. And Earl said, Forky, you want to go see some Hula girls? And Forky says, I bet they're not from Hawaii. And Earl said, I don't care. They're going to do the hula and they're girls. Forky says, you have a point, Earl. Okay, I'll go with you. So Forky and Earl went to the Hula girls presentation one night at the high school gymnasium stage. And there were about 12 girls, and they did the hula, and the lady that was their MC explained all the moves that they did and what they all meant and about the culture of Hawaii. And Forky and Earl didn't hear a word she said because they were just looking at the hula girls. And Forky says, Hey, Earl, they're kind of pretty, aren't they? And Earl goes, One's really pretty, Forky. And Forky said, Yeah, that blonde. And Earl says, No, that brunette over on the far right. And Forky looked at the girl, and then Forky looked at Earl, and Earl looked at the blonde, and then Earl looked at Forky and said, Well, at least we each like a different girl. Well, after the presentation and everybody clapped and the girls went off the stage, Forky and Earl went backstage looking for those two girls. Well, they did meet them, and they were very, very excited. And Forky was talking to the blonde, and Earl found the brunette and says, Hello, what's your name? My name's Earl. And the brunette girl told him her name was Cheryl. And Earl said, Cheryl is a nice name for a hula girl. And she laughed and she smiled. And Earl said, Do you think you would go out with somebody named Earl? And their eyes met, and Cheryl said, I probably would, Earl. And so Earl made a date with her. And then the girls got on a big van and went back to Denver. Well, Forky looked at Earl. Earl looked at the van pulling away. And Forky said, That was a nice evening, Earl. And Earl said, I have a date with one of those girls. And Forky said, Did you know that she lived in Denver? And that is an hour and a half away? And Earl said, I don't care if it's in New York City, Forky. I'm going. We started our In My Life series with Volume 3, where I was 26 years old and it ran to age 49. A couple weeks ago we did Volume 2, that's ages 18 through 25. Today we're doing Volume 1, ages 0 through 17. In a couple weeks from now we'll do Volume 4, which will be ages 50 until today. So let me start here. I was born up in the Colorado Rocky Mountains in a little town that was my hometown, 8,000 feet above sea level. And when I was 1 year old, my parents moved to San Diego, California. We were there until I was about 5, and when we came home, I had a dog with me, and his name was Poncho. We came home in time for me to start kindergarten up in that little town in north central Colorado Rocky Mountains. But before we built our house in town, I lived out in the country, and besides my dog Poncho, I got a donkey and her name was Jenny. Well, then we moved to town, and a little girl and her family moved next door to us, and her name was Mary Ellen. And I had a friend already, his name was Keith, and I met my best friend named Wayne the very first day of kindergarten. If you haven't figured it out yet, he's Forky, and I'm Earl in that Adventures of Forky and Earl. We went through 13 years of public school together. Me, Wayne, Connie and Bill, and Larry, Marilyn, and Jill. There's a bunch of us. I probably shouldn't even started that because I have a picture that tells all those kids, and about half of us from our kindergarten class actually graduated together 13 years later. My school system up there in that little town was really good for me, I do believe. I finally ended up getting into junior high school, and we moved to a brand new school up on the hill And I played football and basketball once I got in high school. When I turned 16, I kind of inherited my family car, and my parents got a new car, and it was a old Ford station wagon, a white station wagon. I thought that was the greatest car in the world. Still might be my second favorite car of all time, actually. Second only to, we had a Jeep Grand Cherokee once, and that was a wonderful car. But that old Ford station wagon, what a great car. Even when I went to the prom, I got to drive my parents' car, their new car. They allowed me to take it to pick the girl up, go to the dance, and then come back to the house and trade cars for my station wagon. I'm amazed they let me do that, actually. Music became very, very important to me. Cruising around listening to KOMA 1520 out of Oklahoma City. Get it crystal clear every night. That's where I really started liking the Beatles. And of course, the Beatles are my all-time favorite music group. I had some great teachers. My favorite one was Leah Beth. I also loved Betty Jo as a teacher. Those two teachers were definitely my favorite. I had a wonderful football coach. It was no nonsense. And yet, as long as you played football, life was good there. During high school, my principal was Mr. W. As much as I really didn't care for him, I did not dislike him. I actually kind of liked him. And he did some wonderful things for me and some tough things at me. And yet, he did let me graduate. And that's all because I got a haircut. I should have called his bluff, see if he'd held me back just because I wouldn't cut my hair. But he might have. I think he is tougher than me. I had some great girlfriends, but it was usually the girlfriend of the week until I met that Hula girl I was telling you about. And Cheryl and I went together for a very long time. Basically my whole senior year. And who knows what would have happened. But she wanted to get married. And I knew I just could not do that. Not at 18 years old. And so when I turned 18, it was right before my high school graduation. And on the night of my graduation, Cheryl and I broke up. I've not heard from her or seen her since. She made my life and my senior year a very enjoyable time. And I always thank her for that. I would. I hope she had a good life. Through all those years leading up to my 18th birthday, my brothers, Brother John, Brother Don, my sister Janice, my mom, my dad, my Aunt Connie, who's 5 months younger than me, my grandma and grandpa, Connie's parents, and my aunts and uncles and cousins, made for a very full life for me. I had to work in my dad's grocery store all the time. As much as I resented it back then, it's one of the most precious things I carry with me in my heart. I wouldn't have traded my childhood for anything. But about 2 weeks after I graduated from high school, I left home on my big adventure. Always be kind. If you hurt someone you love, or even someone that's not that close to you, examine yourself and make it right. Thank you for riding along today. It means more to me than you'll ever know. I'll be back next Wednesday. Peace out.